And now on the line is Rahul Sehgal. Rahul is the Director of Advocacy with Soi Dog Foundation. Rahul, welcome to the RFM.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Rahul, I got in touch with you to do this interview today mainly because I saw an online petition that you started on social media. As this is our first interview in general, though, can you tell me and our listeners, Rahul, a bit about the history and work of Soi Dog Foundation in general first, please?
Sure. Soi Dog is in its 20th year of inception. Primarily, our co-founders, John Daly and his late wife, Jill, took retirement in Phuket about 20 years, more than 20 years ago. But when they were living there at that point of time, they saw the huge need to do something about the overpopulation of free roaming dogs and the way they were being treated and their general health, body condition, and the rampant breeding. Uh, there was cruelty, there was sickness, there were far too many puppies being run over, and both John and Jill decided to do something about it. However, that's when the big disaster, the tsunami, happened, and that's, you can say, that was the watershed moment for Soy Dog to really become an organization that it has become today. It was very humble beginnings, originally associated with, the spay and neuter project and the overpopulation of street dogs. But at that point of time, Thailand also was a country that was consuming dog meat, but more than consumption was transporting live dogs across the borders into Vietnam and to China. And this was, uh, it was a very cruel practice. And our co-founders, along with their team, were instrumental working with the government, getting the dog meat traders caught, enacting a law at the parliament, and then later being involved with enforcement of it was a large issue that Soy Dog dealt with in their early days. Apart from that, Soy Dog slowly set up what is now a world-class facility holding about 2,500 animals under its care. But apart from that, Soy Dog also runs the world's largest spay and neuter program. As a matter of fact, we are closing in on 1 million spays and neuters. On an average, we are able to accomplish close to 20,000 spays and neuters every month in Thailand across several provinces through a method called same-day release, CNVR, where we have field teams going out, catching dogs, and sterilizing them and putting them back in their location after recovery, and a rabies vaccine. The other aspects of what Soy Dog does is a lot of community engagement within the population of Thailand to ensure that the animals that are tolerated as free roaming are humanely treated by the people and are accepted. And they run a large awareness and education program through their Phuket facility as well as through their field teams, educating children about the importance of being kind to animals and letting them have the habitat that they were born in. The dog and cat meat trade in Southeast Asia is one of the flagship campaigns of Soi Dog Foundation, and I head it with my team. And we are currently focusing on the countries Vietnam, Philippines, and soon to begin in Cambodia, in trying to create favorable circumstances where the governments of these countries create and enforce a ban on dog and cat meat consumption.
You have a few centers in Asia, do you?
No, Soy Dog only has its own facility in Thailand. It runs a very large sanctuary in Phuket, but apart from that, it has recently set up a hospital in Bangkok. But apart from that, all the other teams that work across the country are temporary in nature. They are moving teams.
So you have an outreach service, this.
That's right.
That's great to hear, yeah. Okay, you've already touched on this. Just to move on to talk about the main reason I got in touch with you for this interview today, Rahul, it is about the matter of dogs and cats being eaten as food in Asia. Can you tell me more about how big this problem is, Rahul, along with if there has been any progress in recent years?
Well, if we look at about 2 decades ago, there were several countries in Southeast Asia that were actively consuming dogs and cats. However, I'm extremely happy to report that the trend has been very positive for the animal welfare movement, with a number of countries who have either completely outlawed this activity or are in the process of creating significant legislative policies that will prevent and prohibit people from engaging in commercial trade of dogs and cats, either for consumption or for supply to other countries. That still leaves us four large countries where this practice very much exists as we speak in today's day and age. China being the biggest consumer, it is estimated that China consumes close to 10 million or maybe more dogs and cats every year. The second largest consumer, of course, is Vietnam. Through the reports that have been generated over the years, we estimate that Vietnam consumes about 5 million dogs and cats every year. It's perfectly legal, and there is no law to prevent or prohibit either trading in them or to sell them in restaurants. Apart from Vietnam and China, which are the two largest consumers, South Korea is the only developed country in the world which is still actively farming dogs and consuming them. However, in the recent past, there have been some very favorable changes where the current leadership, the president's wife, has vowed to outlaw dog meat consumption before the term of the current government ends, and we congratulate the local animal movement and the international pressure that has helped create this. Indonesia is another large country that is still consuming dogs and cats, but in the past 5 years alone, 21 large cities and provinces have banned consumption of dogs and cats. However, Indonesia still does not have a federal law that has banned it. So these are the 4 or 5 large countries that are still predominantly, my campaign is called The Last Country on Earth, and these are technically the last countries on Earth that are still consuming what is man's best friend.
These are the last countries on Earth, are they? There's no other countries around the world where it's common, no?
Not commercial trade. I mean, there are reports of dog meat consumption in Africa, but that's like the bushmeat trade. It's people who consume animals that they grow. You don't go out to buy dog meat in a market, or you don't go to a restaurant to eat cat meat at certain times of the year. So I can confidently say these are the last countries on earth that are consuming dogs and cats at such a large scale, which is evident and which has an economic value attached to it.
Okay, is the root of this problem in these 4 or 5 countries, do you think, Rahul, mostly poverty?
It has nothing to do with poverty, Darren. Chicken is cheaper than dog meat in many of these countries, and cat meat is more expensive than any other meat that is usually consumed across the world. So there are multiple connotations about the cultural origins of how and where it started. In Vietnam, for sure, we know when the country was at war, there was a famine-like situation in the north, and the dogs were plenty, and this was a cheap source of protein. This is all anecdotal, of course, but we do know that historically, the Chinese region has been primarily the civilization that has some historical facts attached, where they have been consuming dogs and cats. But poverty is certainly not one of them, because I can safely tell you now in Philippines, where dog meat was banned in 2014. It's an underground trade, and dog meat now is a delicacy, and people pay a lot more, not only putting their, it's a punishable offense. If you're caught with dog meat, you would go to jail and you would be fined. But apart from that, the dog meat is expensive. So poverty is certainly not one of the reasons that people are consuming dogs and cats.
Okay, you're a dog foundation, but you look after cats as well, don't you?
We do have cats as well.
Okay, you have an online petition, don't you, Rahul?
Yes, we do.
Can you tell me more about the petition and when it started?
So our current active petition is in Philippines. When we created our strategy on how to end dog and cat meat, we were not only looking at countries that are actively consuming, but there are certain countries where there are laws prohibiting, but because of weak enforcement of those laws, people are still engaging in commercial trade of dog and cat meat. Philippines was one of those countries that has a very, very good and a powerful law against dog meat, but there was lack of enforcement, which is why Soi Dog decided to go back and help correct this. As a part of our initiative, we also launched an online petition asking people to write to the government body in Philippines, which is responsible for enforcement of this law. And I'm happy to tell you that we are close to 1 million signatories, and we hope to deliver this petition in person at a roundtable that we have asked for to discuss about the dog meat ban in October this year at Manila in the Philippines, to ensure that the government can provide all the resources that are required to ensure the enforcement is carried out as per the law that has been enacted several years ago.
Okay, Rahul, to come towards the end of our interview, is there anything else on the dog and cat meat trade that we haven't covered that you'd like to tell our listeners about today on Near FM?
I would like to tell all the listeners that please support the petition. Please look at the website with what we are trying to do. We are very close to creating a movement where the governments in these countries are forced to look at dogs and cats not as livestock for consumption, but also as companion animals, because historically dogs and cats have never been raised for consumption. For Vietnam, we have a very important event coming up on the 4th of July, where we are hosting a roundtable with the highest constitutional authority to discuss dog and cat meat trade. This has never happened ever in the history of Vietnam before, and we hope that by sensitizing people at the decision-making level, we should be able to get some sort of a ban or at least a timeline by when the government of Vietnam would act, because it certainly does not want to be the last country that still consumes dogs and cats.